So, you went to Clemens High School and things like that. I want to talk a little bit more about that. What kind of things were you involved in? You were obviously in football and things like that, but what other things were you involved in there? And how did you mentioned about different schools, right? Oklahoma
Hmm.
State and others. How did you find out that Oklahoma State was a right place for you and that's where you wanted to go for the next 4 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from what I did at Clements, I did National Honor Society. I think I did student council, and PALS was a big thing I was a part of as well in high school. Really loved to get out in the community and help, mentor, younger kids. And but other than that, I mean, it was unique. I mean, my mom basically told me through the process. Even though football, there are some certain I'm not going to say requirements that you're exempt from. It was kind of, I had the mentality going in, what is life going to look like outside of football? If football is not there, what is it going to look like? And out of all the different schools, I came down to Oklahoma State was one that I felt the most home. It was definitely a different culture shock. My entire family went to Texas A&M, and I'm an honorary Aggie by birth, but Oklahoma State is the Oklahoma A&M, so the A&M of the state of Oklahoma. Definitely better than the Sooners down in Norman, but it's a really unique place that I still, orange and black has kind of been ingrained in me still to this day. And it's definitely, now that I recently was back in Houston and took a position and promotion up to help our Gallagher, West Texas office in Lubbock, I definitely get a lot of looks walking around Lubbock and Texas Tech country with my orange and black, but it's a nice rivalry, and so I'm never gonna break down and get orange or red and black. But Texas Tech's a good school as well, 100%. So.
Awesome. So you definitely were involved, National Honor Society, those kinds of things. So that's great. Students, just know, right, you need to put yourself out there, right? Go out and experience different things. And don't think of it, so much of like, oh, I want to put this in my resume. And yeah, if you approach it that way, that's good. But think of, I want to experience new things and find out, what I like and things like that. So that's awesome. So you mentioned you took a visit as well, right, to Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
Students, if you can definitely do that, that would be great. You can show up there in person. But if you can't, we just had the Oklahoma State rep come and talk right before you
Yeah.
came in. Yeah, so she said, virtual tours and things like that, hop on there and check it out, right? If you really like the campus, look at YouTube videos, what kinds of clubs and activities there is, and you might find out that's a school you want to go to.
Yeah.
So
it definitely, Stillwater is a place you need to go at least visit once. I'll be honest, I only visited once during the summer of going into my senior year. I didn't have a chance to go up during the winter months, and being that I am from Houston, just so everyone is aware, it does get cold there. It does snow there. I didn't really put two and two together when I was being recruited. And I still remember one of my best memories of college as a freshman. I was paired up rooming with three other guys that were on the team with me that were all from Texas. And we all kind of looked at each other as the worst ice storm in Oklahoma history in like 100 years. And we sat there like, why are we here? But other than that, it was a fantastic experience, and definitely a small town feel, and definitely a home away from home.
Great. So we have a lot of young, individuals, sophomores, juniors in here. So definitely academics is great, but athletics is also really, a path to where, can allow you to get your school paid for, to do all those different kinds of things. What
Mm-hmm.
kind of things would you recommend for students to do, to help them out in the recruitment process, not just in football, but just in general for any sport?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Definitely I have so many people to thank to give me the opportunity at Oklahoma State. It wasn't just, me, it was my teammates, my parents, coaches throughout the years that, were putting film on tape for me and sending it out. And a lot of it had to be proactive. I had to sell myself to a lot of these universities. I was I was a long snapper in high school, and for those of you who don't know what that is, I basically hiked the ball to the punter and the kickers. But I was also an offensive lineman, and if you don't put yourself out there, no one's going to take notice. And so I went through the early rejection process of sending my tape everywhere. It definitely was a nerve-wracking process, and getting turned down by some schools kind of made you swallow your pride a little bit and say, okay, you're not always gonna get the answer you want to, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And so I was sending film everywhere, and if anyone was going to talk to me, I was open to have a conversation with them. So you definitely have to take that priority, take that proactive nature when the recruiting process, and not expect them to come to you, because no matter how good you think you are, there's always someone who's bigger, better, faster, stronger than you out there. So I have to put that in mind.
Oh, thank you. And I really like how you mentioned you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And this goes down for everything. You might be thinking, oh, I want to apply to this school, but you think, my ACT is not there. Try to do it anyway. And if you can't, you got Khan Academy, keep studying. And, if you don't get in there, right, whether it's athletically or whatever your goal may be, just keep trying, right? That's what it's all about. So
100%.
So my other question now, I want to go get into more about, student life for you and life as a student athlete at Oklahoma State. So can you talk to me a little bit more in depth about your experience at Oklahoma State as a student athlete and kind of what your typical day was like?
Yeah, so it was definitely different than most. We would start off during the season, we would have Mondays off, which was nice, and we would have classes. Majority of the time, we were fortunate enough. Years later, I realized I forgot how blessed we were to have priority registration and things that we could get our classes, scheduled ahead of other students, not taking their spots, but there's only so many spots per class. So they would try to schedule us out in the morning after we would do our lifting. Usually wake up on Tuesday mornings, be up 5:30 in the weight room at 6, working out till about 7:30, 8. Then showers, go to class. Usually first class is around 9. And usually you're going around 9 to, on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, probably 9 to about 1 or 2. And then, during that time, you got to go get lunch on campus, which was super easy to get around at OSU because everything's so tight together. And then we'd have our first team meeting at 3 o'clock, and usually 2:33. And then we'd have practice from about 3:30 to about 5:30 or 6. And then it's straight to study hall, straight to our academic center, and rinse, repeat, do the same thing the next day. So it's that same regimen each and every day. And that was part of the comfort of having that sort of structure set in. And even when I finished school or finished playing, I still had to go to grad school, and those same, building out my week, what I need to accomplish each and every day, learning that discipline is definitely carried over into, my professional life, almost, 6 years later since I graduated. So those life lessons you take from being an athlete, you have to be organized, have to excel at time management, and you have to be dedicated and not let distractions get the best of you.
Excellent. So you mentioned, like, a lot of people might think, oh, student athletes, they get the best out of everything, right? They show up Saturday mornings, play, but there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, right? You mentioned study hall. Do you remember, it's probably been a while, do you remember how many hours of study hall did you guys have to do a week?
Well, as a freshman, you would come in, and this is pretty standard for most, colleges, at least specifically in the Big 12 and the SEC, that invest a lot of money into their academic programs. OSU did a really good job of setting us up with with an advisor that we would go with every Monday. Usually, at least mine was every Monday around, after class at 10:30, 11, go sit in for 10, 20 minutes. This is what we have this week. And as you start to get your grades up, and usually after the first semester, they can figure out, all right, does this individual need to have particular attention? Do they need to have more study hall? You kind of have to grade yourself, get the better grades you get out of it. I mean, not out of it, but I still took advantage of, the private rooms you can go into, and the tutors that they would bring in, which the majority of them were almost all of them were student tutors, graduate students that would, obviously the university would pay to come tutor us, but taking advantage of those opportunities. And I was very fortunate that I got to take advantage of those. But from an advising standpoint, you're looking at around a minimum, probably 2 to 3 hours a night, Monday through Friday. And so that's about 10, 15 hours a week outside of that. And the good thing is once you were done with your, done with study hall, usually you need to be done with your homework and your studying, just go right home and go to sleep and rinse and repeat the next day.
Repeat the next day. Awesome. So so it's super important, and it shows Oklahoma State, really cares about, because ultimately, they're preparing you're going to college to get that degree. So it's good, that they're preparing you in that way. I know, there's other universities as well that incorporate study hall and things like that. So let's see, what was your favorite thing to do when you weren't doing practice or anything? What was your favorite thing to do there at Oklahoma State in Stillwater?
So typically, at least my early years, because you're going, to kind of put things in perspective, we actually added it up one day. I mean, we spent approximately 250, 275 days a year in Stillwater out of 365. All year long. And for us, being from Houston, that's 500 miles away. I couldn't get to come home. So any free time I had, I would try to, at least even for like a bye week, just shut the engines off and sit around and play video games with some buddies. And, as we got older, there's a lot of good places to go to in Stillwater from obviously as of age, when you get to that age, from a, nightlife standpoint, but also just being on campus, there's always events and things going on, concerts that are, little mini concerts that are happening, and just kicking it, and hang out with the guys. So.
Awesome.
And also golfing a lot. There's a lot of good golf courses in Stillwater that even though I grew up, I didn't grow up in a golf family at all. I didn't really discover golfing until I got to Oklahoma State. And one thing that I don't know if the campus recruiter touched on it, the ones that we talked to earlier, but OSU is pretty unique in that you go 5 to 10 minutes outside of campus, you're in the middle of, the country. And it's something pretty cool that I never took through. I should have taken advantage more of it. Obviously you got to know some people, landowners and people that, let you go and, fish and hunt and stuff. But that's a really unique draw that I realized in the process. This is something cool to, not just be stuck in a town all the time. You can get out and go see some different sites and wildlife and stuff.
Yeah, go out and enjoy the outdoors and things like that. So as far as student athletes and things like that, does the university kind of incorporate? Is there a lot of interaction between, you would say, the football team and maybe the soccer team or the baseball team? As far as from your personal story,
because the academic center was for all sports. Everyone was always in the same, typically we coming in the same classes. We'd have all the same classes and same times the majority of the time. So you just form friendships. So I had buddies on the baseball team, the golf team, a couple of the girls that were on the soccer team I still stay in touch with. And, and it was funny because basketball season, typically we would be on flip schedules because they would be in their busy, I guess their season started kind of at the end of ours. Then we would kind of flip flop, priority register, the times of classes and stuff. So, but yeah, no, they definitely did a good job putting us all together. And on top of that, our training table where we had meals, it was all open to everyone. So it wasn't just football, all sports would come in. So you get to see some people after a long day of work. And
that's great.
Definitely do a good job keeping us all together.
That's awesome. So yeah, definitely get to establish your connections. So the rep, that we had also attended Oklahoma State, and we got to see kind of her perspective of, maybe what game day would be like on Saturday, mornings or whenever it be. But now, we want to see your perspective from a player. Can you kind of take us back to what it feels like to, be suiting up, put that jersey on, and what's the atmosphere like as a player?
Well, yeah, I did bring this out, still have a couple of these laying around, but no, it's definitely unique atmosphere to be a part of. And, you know, obviously OSU is so much more than just, you know, football. I mean, the athletics program is solid all the way around. You know, we were fortunate enough to have the endowment from Mr. T. Boone Pickens. For those of you who don't know him, please Google him. He's a very inspiring man and what he's been able to do, and not just you know, for the energy industry at all, but Oklahoma State especially put millions of dollars into, you know, the facilities. And a lot of times when it comes to, you know, universities, you'll see some that they're putting a lot of money into the athletics stadium or the locker rooms, but he put just as much into the actual, you know, campus as he did on the athletics side. And so, you know, I haven't been back in probably 2-3 years. The last time I went, there was a major, you know, construction of the Spears School of Business where I went to, basically a big old hole in the ground, which I was not expecting to see at all. And so I've heard that they're opening it back up, but game day is huge. It's so nice. Stillwater is, as I've described to people and those that are familiar with A&M and the 12th man, it's like A&M, but about 15, 20, you know, 10, 15 years ago. It's not nearly, it's not as many fireworks and, you know, pageantry going on. It's very much the town comes together for game day. Very easy to get in and out of. And out of all the guys that I've played against, I always asked them what it was like to play in Stillwater, and they always said it was by far the loudest stadium. Whenever you walk in, it looks like you're looking straight up because the fans are right on top of you. And literally it was probably 2 feet from the wall to the stands to the bleachers itself. So definitely intimidating and a lot of fun and a lot of memories, you know, late night, Friday night, Saturday night games and some of the biggest games in my career, especially, definitely memories for a lifetime.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That makes me want to go look at a YouTube video and check it out, see what it's like and stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys too, and I know this is about Oklahoma State as well, but a lot of the guys that I played with, you know, myself included, I think we did the tally up one time, and it was about 80 to 85% of our entire team was from the state of Texas, and that is not by that is not. You know, that's not by accident. That is by design, because a lot of the guys that, you know, may or may not have been recruited heavily by your big schools here, your Texas and your A&Ms. And so I think then, and a lot of those guys play with a chip on their shoulder, and we would get to play those big schools. And it's just a life lesson you learn, you know, even when you're undervalued at one point in time, so you don't get the job you're looking for, or, you know, don't get selected for, you know, certain something. That chip on your shoulder, and that's kind of where a lot of our guys played with. And I think it's just the town as a whole. I mean, Stillwater is a unique place, and until you go there and actually experience a weekend of it, not a lot of people understand. So,
So for those, you know, teammates that you talked about, right? They play with the chip on their shoulder. Those teammates that weren't heavily as recruited or things like that. What are some things, if you remember, that they might have shared with you to the extent that they went to, you know, put themselves out there? In order to get recruited?
I mean, it's definitely, when it comes to the football process, and it's a little bit different than other sports, but if you're good enough to play in high school, you can always walk on. If you're good enough to start, they want to see people that are willing to, you know, put the team above themselves. I myself was a preferred walk-on, so there wasn't necessarily a scholarship spot that I had reserved for me. But they treated me like a recruit, like a scholarship athlete, minus paying for my school for my first 2 years. And then they put the incentive in place to where if you play well enough and you start, then you'll be on full scholarship, which was you know, you've seen those videos on YouTube of other schools announcing, you know, you're on scholarship. Well, they didn't do that for me or any of our guys at the time. It was, hey, you know, here you go. And obviously a really memorable point of my life. And I remember calling my parents crying and excited about it. But there's a lot of life lessons you can take in terms of that grit and adversity you're going to face throughout life, even outside of, you know, sports is obviously how I like to communicate with others from an analogy standpoint, but you're going to face things you can't control. And so the only thing you can really do is, instead of quitting and, now all of a sudden with the new recruiting guidelines and transfer portals and stuff, I mean, coaches aren't going to want to see you bouncing from school to school just because you're not being able to play. Because the reality is, in 5-6 years after you guys graduate high school, you're going to be put in a competitive, environment, depending on what job you choose. And the job market's only going to get tighter and tighter, and they're not going to care, who your mom is, who your dad is. They're going to see, what can you do for us as an organization? And so that same grit and adversity, and this is also coming from a very highly competitive person. I know I'm not like most others. I took a job in an aggressive sales company. So I know I'm not wired like everyone else, but definitely that getting over adversity and pushing through is a big part of why a lot of those guys are so successful, and even more successful now than even when they were in college. And that same principle around working hard, overcoming adversity, it's a big part of, why, and it's not just in football, it's in baseball, other sports too, and just a lot of grit is a big part of being successful.
So have a grit and fight through adversity, right? Just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something. Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you another question, which is, what is the most important thing that being a student athlete taught you, that you would say?
If you aren't 15 minutes early or late to anything, it's the little things. If you can take care of little things each and every day, treating others with respect. I mean, and overall life is a team game. That's one thing that, a lot of individuals that I think, especially for an organization like Gallagher, we want to work with those that are used to team environments. They're not always about themselves. It's about putting yourself out there for your team as a whole. And it's going to be the same no matter what you do in any industry, anything. If you can work well within teams, you're going to be well sought out for as a talent. I mean, that's ultimately, I hate to say this, but it doesn't matter where you went to school. It doesn't matter what as long as you made good grades and you got the degrees requirements, it doesn't matter if you went to Ivy League school or you went to Oklahoma State. There's still going to be someone who has to do job A, who can do job A better. And so if you can practice those skills and that, repetition over and over and over again, it's just going to be a habit and over time.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's excellent. Thank you. So I know earlier you mentioned, you got put on scholarship. So that was a very memorable moment for you, but what would be another really memorable moment for you at, OSU, you would say?
I'd say outside of the athletic portion, it was getting my master's. I was at the time, the master's program that they had for the Walkons graduate school for just a general MBA was 52 credit hours, which that's going to take you around 2.5 years. And about 3/4 of the way through my time, I thought initially, so just kind of going back in my head, so the January of 2015, I was going to do one semester, basically had 2 semesters left. So I was going to be, January, March, spring of 15, and then summer internship, and then fall another semester. Then I could start the following year. Well, they actually condensed down the entire, courses and everything. It said, you're actually going to be finished. All you have to take is one extra class. That was, I kind of took it for granted being there, and I was excited, obviously, to get in the working world. But I still remember, I think I found out like the week after spring break. I mean, spring break, you only have a couple weeks till finals, and then you're like, whoa, this is over, 5 years of your life. But, so many friendships. I mean, people still to this day that I still talk with. I mean, I'm a part of 2, fantasy football leagues of guys that I played with and guys that I was in the master's program with, and, and still keeping up with them and their wives and kids and everything. And it's definitely a brotherhood amongst people from all over too. And I think that's the one thing that's really important and why I chose OSU, even outside of my normal could have been easy routes, LSU or Tech, was because I didn't know anyone that was going to OSU, and I wanted to get out of my comfort zone and meet others, people, and not see the same people from high school. Not that I didn't like them, but it was kind of the whole point of college, in my opinion, is to really, spread your wings and find new people and new experiences. There's definitely a lot, but graduating, it was funny. My master's graduation, OSU is also really known for its online, and now all of a sudden, which is also kind of funny because now the new norm is the online class, platforms and everything. And OSU had that down pretty well. I mean, it's a very robust system that they have, very easy to log in and out of. I always remember that because I remember my buddies at other schools having problems with it. But we had guys in my master's program that were fighting fighter jets in Afghanistan. We had no idea. We're graduating, and all of a sudden the top guy in our class shows up in his uniform, and I go, "Who's that guy?" And we had no idea who it was. And that big commitment, a lot of the people that are taking online classes and graduate level courses are in the military, and I had no idea too. But all of a sudden now we've got a bigger family of folks, and a lot of definitely good memories with a lot of just random people. I think that's one thing, my experience there, just meet a lot of people that are from all different walks of life, not just Texas, but a lot of good people that are there. That's
awesome. Yeah. You start off by mentioning kind of like, 5 years went by pretty quick, right? And things like that. That's the way, seniors, it's going to go by quick. Times are going to get hard, but just think, maybe 3 years from now, I'm going to be done. And I'm going to focus on making it the best experience, that I have, and go out there, like Mr. Suter, he was part of the football team. So he kind of walked into kind of a family, right? Although he didn't know anyone, he said he kind of went against the grain a little bit. He wanted to, be outside of his comfort zone, do that as well, right? There's different intramurals, there's different, clubs and organizations in every school that you guys go to. So go check that out. And if you're interested in sports, you're not heavily recruited yet, you can always walk on, right? And maybe, later keep working hard and get put on scholarship. But that is everything from me. I'm going to open it up for some questions right away. So drop them in the chat box, whether it be, athletics, academics, whatever you guys would like to ask, drop it in the chat box and I'll read them off.